The Dakota Gold Mysteries contain mature content including violence, sexual situations, alcohol, drug and other substance use, and profane language.
I knew the moment they knocked on my door there were going to be trouble. That kind always are. But I still let them in. There was something compelling about them, even swathed in a designer Anko cape. Something that drew the eye, forced the observer to pay attention. It was written in the angles of their body, in every careful, practiced gesture, in the graceful way they shed the protective outer garment. And once they had... What can I say? I'm a sucker for blue eyes. Even when they aren't real. There are thousands of Somas in Cloud City. At least a third of the population have transferred permanently from meat to replica. Hell, even I thought about shrugging off the old corpus once upon a time. Above a certain floor, even the people still wearing meat suits have a few plastic backups in storage. More than you'd expect have a recreational morph or two in some secluded habitation or storage unit. The person that walked into my office that afternoon was 100% grade A plastic, and practically flaunting it. The body they wore clearly had not been sculpted by Mother Nature. How could it have been? It was perfect.
Mr. Gold, I've been told you're the man to go to when you need someone found.
But it wasn't the soma they wore, the deliberate way they moved, or even the additional information granted me by my so-called Midas touch that clued me into the fact that I had been wrong. They carefully curated their presentation and dialogue, but their voice told me the truth. A sour note and an otherwise sultry and melodic tone. A slight tremor. The merest hint of panicked fight or flight anxiety. Fear, not entirely suppressed. They weren't going to be trouble. They were in it.
I understand you are a private investigator.
What it says on the door, isn't it?
And that you can find anyone?
Some have been known to say.
Well, I was given your name by Laura for...
Let me stop you there, love. Because, and please forgive my language, cut the shit.
I'm sorry.
Cut the shit. You won't hear my name for a single blue unless it's accompanied by, let's call it colourful terminology. An understatement, but she'd not know my history with Cloud City law enforcement. I had, after all, gone to great lengths to blot it from the record. And a refined individual such as yourself shouldn't be exposed to such language. I was laying it on a mite thick with the refined. It went over well with the posh types who liked their dirty work kept at a discreet distance. Or at least with a veneer of plausible deniability. And as the quality of their clothing marked them as aspiring to high society, I figured it might go over well. I was wrong.
Now you need to cut the shit, Mr. Gold. There is no need to pretend you've not judged my soma and found it to be wanting. I'm not here to be flattered.
Oh? Then why are you here, sweetheart?
To hire you to find my body. Before I do.
They'd changed. Heightened. Their muscles contracted, mouth compressed to a thin line. Visually, they were preparing to bolt. My olfactory upgrades told me the same thing. Tread carefully. But then, they looked me up and down. cerulean eyes veiled by dark lashes.
Do I interest you?
Oh, I was interested, all right. I told myself it was just Midas' touch prickling. My investigative intuition spinning up, about to be presented with a fascinating problem. But who are we kidding? It was an entirely different kind of prickling. Still, there was something about them. I wanted to know more.
So well, you're taking my case?
Honestly, depends, love. Everything about their looks, the clothes, the skin, the clearly custom eyes and hair, screamed money, which I liked. The way they glanced toward the door, the hint of fear swept in their scent, and the slight wobble that continued to creep into their voice meant risk. I didn't like that. Don't misunderstand. Every case involves risk. That's the job. It's how much, and more importantly, what kind, that matters. Well, if I'm being truly honest, it in fact didn't matter. Not in their case. I already knew I'd do it. The only thing I hadn't decided was what I would charge. All right. Who really sent you to me? They were clearly considering refusing to answer. They sub-vocalized sound of negation, their face beginning to rearrange itself into hard lines that didn't suit. But then something gave.
Valentine.
I should have known. Valentine, the veterinarian of Voight. Cloud City's #1 procurer of exotic soma. And people to wear them. A client list filled with top-floor names. Reputation for broad-mindedness, as well as discretion. Our history is, shall we say, complicated. But he does send me the most interesting cases. A client referred by Val is guaranteed to come up with two things: a singularly thorny problem and deep pockets. Oh, well, why didn't you say so? Retainers $500 a day, plus expenses. There are two kinds of people who call Valentine by his first name: his customers and his products. I had a fairly good idea which they were, but they'd already surprised me once, and I wasn't keen for it to happen again. After they thumbed the credit transfer authorization, I pointed to the chair in front of my desk and grabbed my palm pad and stylus. All right, love, what's your story?
I don't even know where to start.
I'm told the beginning's a very good place. How about your name?
Oh, Roxanne. Just Roxanne.
Right, Roxanne. She, they, other?
She.
And why are you here?
Because I'm double-sleeved.
There it was. She was perching on the very edge of the chair like a bird that hasn't decided if it's alighted somewhere safe. Double-sleeved meant her personality had been iterated and transferred into multiple unique bodies without her permission. Which is, for the people keeping count, at least triple-sleeved, if not quadruple or quintuple. But if there's only more than one of you running around the city, the Blues don't care if it's 2 or 24. It's all just as illegal, and just as expensive to make go away. As a result, no one's bothered to introduce the more populous terms into the lexicon. Let's have a head count, shall we?
I can be sure of at least 3. This body, a simulacrum of my corpus, and a morph.
And the original corpus?
Well, of course.
And you sure you didn't intentionally iterate?
I did not.
The anger seemed genuine. Or if not, an excellent facsimile thereof.
complete with flushed cheeks, heightened body temperature, and narrowed eyes gone lapis. But it paid to be sure. I pushed a little harder.
No skin off my nose either way, love. So what if you wanted a bonus self? Or maybe a client wanted something special?
It was a gamble. But it paid off.
I do not offer services like... Mr. Gold, I did not and would not agree to be iterated.
Sure. So, there's 3 of you, and the meat suit. Where have you stashed it?
I don't know. That's exactly the problem.
Her eyes shifted again, this time to a clear sapphire, and the ice in her voice melted a degree.
So explain it to me very simply. How does a nice girl like you end up loaded into 3 somas and not her corpus?
Mr. Gold, surely you've realised by now that I am not a nice girl.
I wasn't sure if it was a come-on or just sounded like one. Let's keep talking.
It was an accident, the duplication.
Uh-huh.
I think.
Please continue.
I had an event to attend, one to which this body was better suited.
There was a sudden hesitance, and she'd shifted ever so slightly in her chair. She'd stumbled over a vent. It was surprisingly demure, and oddly appealing.
I went to the care provider, the swap shop I always use, but the transfer was difficult. There was a glitch.
A glitch?
I briefly lost consciousness.
And?
And when I woke up, everyone was gone.
What? The provider?
Everyone. Provider, assistants, equipment, and my corpus.
Sorry, you're saying that you passed out and the entire staff of the swap shop just packed it in and went home before you woke up?
Oh, not just the staff, the entire clinic was gone. Well, that is, I was still inside the building, but it was empty. No staff, no equipment, no me. But you've got to understand, Mr. Gold, this wasn't some fly-by-night body mill. It was a reputable business. But as reputable as possible, given the circumstances. They'd been there for years. They were well established with ties to the community. I'd been their client hundreds of times.
Which was further proof towards my hypothesis about just Roxanne's profession. Not that I had needed it.
Uh-huh. And when did you realise you were double-sleeved?
Well, immediately. At first I thought I was alone. It was so quiet and dark. Well, I sat up and looked around, and the other 2 were just there.
With you, in the empty building, where the clinic had been?
Yes. We must have been iterated at the same time. We talked after all 3 of us got our speech centres working, which took a while because the morph was a hyena form, but they remembered the same thing that I did. Arriving at the clinic, starting the transfer, the error, and then nothing.
You're the primary sheep. The one off of which the others were duplicated.
Yes. I think.
You think?
Well, the name of my personality core match DNA matches my memory.
Which meant exactly fuck all, and she knew it.
But you did a deep scan and confirmed the designated numeric authorization iteration status.
Well, I couldn't exactly do that in an empty clinic, could I? It seemed a very bad idea to involve the Blues or any official agency, and deep scanners are still illegal for personal use, Mr. Gold.
If I hadn't already known what she was saying to be patently untrue, her body language and the subperceptual cues she radiated would have given it away. Sure, Deep scanners are only available to private citizens via extra-legal means, and even then, authentic, fully functional ones incredibly difficult to obtain. But Val has one, and Roxanne would know that fact. Apparently, it matters a great deal to some people that the person they've hired to put on a different body and act a part is the original of said person. She'd gone to Val for help, gotten my name from him. She could have been scanned at the same time, proven her status as original. She'd chosen not to. I decided not to press her on it. For now.
So what's the problem then? Just the missing meat suit?
Well, the other two, they both believe they are Prime.
How utterly unreasonable.
Mr. Gold, I know this sounds unlikely, but you have to believe it's true, every word.
Another lie, but part of the standard script all of my clients follow. I let it go.
So, to summarise, a transfer clinic was contracted to put a high-end escort into a three-legged, three-breasted body, and instead sleeved her in 3 different somas before disappearing. Nah, just another Tuesday round here, love.
Her relief filled the room like a warm breeze, as powerful as the brush of her fingers on breast skin through my Midas touch. It had been so long since. I found I needed a moment to compose myself, and bought time by giving her another obvious once-over. She was still nervous, still looking over her shoulder, still radiating fear and uncertainty. But now, at least entertaining the possibility that she could trust me.
And if I understand correctly, you want me to hunt up this vanished clinic, retrieve your meat suit corpus, and get you back inside it before one of the other 2 versions of you have the chance. Yeah?
Yes. Do you think you can do it?
She looked up at me again through eyelashes now damp with hopeful tears. Her eyes were a glittering aquamarine, sparkling even brighter than before. And again, there was that unexpected demureness, a kind of sincerity, a soft gentility that showed me the person she was underneath the facades. Not a sharp-edged plastic doll, not a shivering bird, but someone warm, alive, and very human. Something woke inside me, something I thought dead, long dead, and burned alongside. And yet here it was, opening its eyes and taking a few faltering steps. It was strange, but not entirely unpleasant.
It's as good as done.
And she smiled. Dawn breaking over the hydrogen sea. And I decided that what I'd agreed to do was entirely achievable and in no way overpromising. I would be finding her body, and I'd be doing it quickly.
Right. Let's get to work then, shall we?
With most clients, the hardest part of the job is convincing them to be honest about their circumstances. We're dealing with their little secrets, dragging their dirty laundry out into the light. It usually takes some encouragement to get them to spill. Given the glimpses I'd gotten of the girl behind the masks, I had a feeling Roxanne was going to be no exception. She surprised me for a second time. I wouldn't be letting her do it again.
I am a dream girl.
Oh,
Don't pretend to be shocked. You worked that out as soon as you learned who referred me. Maybe sooner.
I was surprised. Not at the revelation, at the fact she'd made it. Obviously she wasn't some casual body hopper who just happened to go to the wrong swap shop. She handled the Soma's additional limbs with a kind of grace that only came from practice. She wore morphs on the regular. I again revised my opinion of the woman. ticked her higher in my regard. It takes a particular kind of mind to handle the synaptic demands of extra-human shapes. A flexible mind, and a strong one. Whatever else this Roxanne might be, she had a spine of titanium.
Clients hire me to be what they want. Anything they want. Some of the somas I've worn would make even a worldly man like yourself blush, Mr. Gold. But most of them are like this one.
She traced a fingernail along her collarbone, down her sternum. Her nails were, I noticed, lacquered as red as the helium currents.
Just different enough to be interesting, to feel exotic, to give the client a taste of the fantastic, the peculiar, without being actually deviant. I am very good at my job, Mr. Gold, and believe it or not, I enjoy it.
That was not a surprise. She worked for Val, and Val had rules.
A large amount of my enjoyment is due to my employer, who has also seen to it that I've been provided with several lucrative opportunities.
Or, at least, Val had a rule. The veterinarian would arrange even the most unconventional encounters, as long as it fell within a single sacrosanct, uncompromising principle. His employees took the engagements they wanted, and only the engagements they wanted. He entertained no enticement, no wheedling, allowed no pressure to be applied, financial or otherwise, and ensured that his people were paid well enough that such tricks would be largely ineffective, even from himself. And as far as I was aware, this principle had never been violated. Though God knows he's had ample opportunity and incentive. I'd never have reason to pry into his financials, but given his lifestyle and the fact that I have yet to hear a client has been turned away, presumably there are personalities willing to fulfill a significant range of desires. Takes all kinds.
I respect and admire him, and am truly grateful for the doors he's opened for me.
Her subperceptual cues were shifting again. She wasn't as sure about what she was saying as she wanted me to believe.
But there comes a point where a person must strike out on their own, if they wish to be truly successful.
And there it was. She'd been freelancing. Outside Val's purview, and thus outside his protection. Brilliant.
So, the job, this was...
The encounter.
The encounter you put this on for was self-arranged.
Yes. But as I said earlier, the encounter itself never happened.
Right. A glitch. What did happen then?
Well, I transferred, and then the Soma and I desynced.
You're kidding me.
How much do you know about neural somatic synchronization, Mr. Gold?
Enough.
Mm-hmm.
I at least know that desyncing isn't something that just happens.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't. In standard situations.
And I suppose yours was an exceptional situation.
My situations are the definition of exception.
I watched her ice over, posture straighten, breathing slow, pupils contract to pinpricks. Her gaze drilled into me like shards of lake blue ice. And when she spoke again, it was like she was speaking to a young and particularly dull child.
The vast majority of people utilize 3 or fewer somas in their lifetime, 4 if you include short-term recreational bodies, and for the most part they're all within 1 degree of physiological variation from human standard. Which is to say that 1, most people's brains are rarely asked to remap themselves, and 2, when they do transfer into a new soma, there's very little adaptation required. Their neural pattern is being mapped across a body very similar to the one it's used to managing. Synchronization is simple, largely handled by autonomic systems and virtually glitch-free.
Like I said.
At this time, to the best of my knowledge, I've worn over 400 different skins, 3/4 of them more than 5 degrees away from human. My brain is very good at adapting, but the sheer frequency of and the variation between physiotypes and switches increases the potential for glitches exponentially, meaning that
you're naturally more likely to desync.
Exactly. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And it did that day. Except...
What?
It felt strange.
Strange? How?
Well, usually desyncing is an incredibly physical experience, for the self, I mean. It's as though... Have you ever experienced limb falling asleep?
I've had pins and needles.
Well, you want your hand to move. You know yourself is sending a signal to your hand to move, but it doesn't. No matter how hard you command the fingers to twitch, nothing happens. Desyncing is like that. Thought, sending impulse to act, action, doesn't happen. But this was different.
Different how?
I couldn't move, but I also couldn't want to move.
I don't follow.
I was aware of the soma, of myself inside it, and I wanted to try to move it. I wanted to want to move, but the desire stopped when I began to consider actually putting it into action. I can't explain it in words.
It's okay. You've done fine. I've got more than enough to go off.
I hadn't. Not really. But it was more than it had with some cases. Besides, given the confused muddle of sub-sensory cues she currently displayed, it was obvious I wouldn't be getting anything else from her at the moment.
Right then. I need you to call if you remember anything else that might be of use.
You have to understand, I need my body back.
That's the job you've hired me to do, Roxanne.
Please do it quickly, Mr. Gold.
And with that final imperious command, my new client pulled her anchor on, locked the respirator over her face, and vanished into Cloud City's perpetual twilight, leaving me to mull over which branch to prune first in the thorn bush that was this case. After Roxanne left my office, I nosed around the feeds for an hour, trying to dig up who she was, what had happened to the summer parlour she claimed to have visited, and where Valentine was these days. It had been a while since our last conversation, and I knew all too well just how busy the man could make himself. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or frustrated that the answer to all three turned out to be not very much. It left me with a single pressing question. Did I go to the scene first, or talk to the contact?
Welcome to Tamron Tower Luxury Habitations. At this time, we are required by law to notify you that utilising this elevator signifies your consent to a minimally invasive meta-DNA scan for the sole purpose of username identification. Your designated numeric authorization will not be scanned. No personal data is recorded or saved. To which floor may I have the pleasure of conveying you?
Penthouse D.
I opted for the contact. It might have been more prudent to visit the scene first, get a feel for just how much of what the client had told me was the actual truth, as opposed to her recollection. But over the years I've known him, I've learned that if a case is in some way tied to the veterinarian, our interview will inevitably turn up some heretofore unknown information that fundamentally changes what I thought I was investigating. Plus, after a conversation with Val, I'd need a walk to clear my head. I always did.
I'm sorry, but access to the penthouse level is by invitation only.
Rich people and their bloody demented need to separate themselves from the poors.
Call him.
I'm sorry, Tamarind Towers does not have a resident by that name.
Call Val.
I'm sorry, Tamarind Towers does not have a resident by that name.
Call Valentine.
I'm sorry, Tamarind Towers does not have a resident by that name.
Call Valentine fucking Voight right this instant.
Tamarind Towers would like to remind you that displaying aggression towards its automated systems is a violation of Cloud City Administrative Code 1229.6a. The system code violations may result in a fine or punitive disleaving. I'm sorry, Tamarind Towers does not have a resident by that name.
All right, fine. Would you, O mighty voice of the elevator, call the occupant of Penthouse D, please and thank you.
Placing your call now.
Hello there! I didn't think I had any appointments this afternoon, but welcome. Now, just for security's sake, if you wouldn't mind looking up into the little camera there, please?
Really, every time.
Oh my! Dakota! It's you! What an unexpected pleasure. I thought I recognized a familiar voice swearing at the elevator. What brings you all the way into the upper city today,
Business.
Of course. You work far too hard, my dear man. Everyone needs a little pleasure now and then.
Well, you'd be the expert, wouldn't you?
You know, I'm beginning to think you only visit me when you need something these days, Coda.
Guilt stabbed a thin, razor-edged blade into my guts. He wasn't wrong, and I hated myself for the fact. But I hated him even more for saying it.
I'm busy, Val. Some of us have to work for a living.
Struck through the heart. But, all right then. If answering a few questions is the price I must pay to see my brother, then so be it. I'll buzz you up.
Dakota, come in. Don't stand there in the doorway like a guest. We're family. Oh, but do take your anchor off before you leave decontamination, if you wouldn't mind. I just had the place chelated, and, well, I'd rather there be at least a few days before the hydrogen buildup starts again.
My brother has impeccable taste. It's absolutely infuriating. Val would be easier to stomach if he surrounded himself in tasteless ornamentation, decked out his penthouse in baubles dripping with gilding and jewels, garish polychromatic catastrophes of carpets, furniture made to be looked at and not used, conspicuous signs of wealth meant to look expensive rather than attractive. Maddeningly, he possesses both restraint and an eye for true quality rarely seen among the very wealthy. It is, I imagine, a holdover from our unfortunate upbringing. But that doesn't make it any less insufferable.
Really, Kota, you look so tired and thin. Have you been eating? Getting your vitamins? Enough light exposure? You know they just increased the recommendation to 350,000 solar lumens a day, and you do not look as though you've been getting even half that much.
I'm fine, Valentine.
I know. You always are. But if I can't fuss over my little brother, then really, what is the point?
The point of what?
Of anything.
Valentine, Can you just drop the act for once?
You're one to talk, Dakota Gold, private eye. But all right. Come back to the office and tell me what it is you need this time. I frequently refer people to you.
Honestly, I'm grateful.
It isn't about being grateful, Dakota.
Yes. So you've said.
Why do you always have to... And you're looking for what? An address? Contact number? Client list?
Anything you've got, honestly.
Tell me about them.
Goes by Roxanne. Currently female, dark hair, medium skin, blue eyes, with some kind of mood shift colour mod.
Somomorph?
Standard adjacent. Supplementary limbs and features, third eye.
Third eye? Eye placement?
Oh, Christ, Val. How many people do you know with 3 eyes?
Placement?
Centre forehead.
Ah, yes, I know that so. Had her on the roster for a few years, just a mo. Okay. Username Roxanne Webb. Do you need their legal name?
Would I recognise it?
No.
Then not at the moment.
And you're interested in her engagement parameters?
Why else would I be here?
Okay. Right. Soma types not accepted. Full bestial, necrotic, childlike. Engagement types not accepted. Violence with injury, violence with anger, age play, dulcet.
Dulcet?
Do you really want an explanation?
No. No, I'm good.
Dulcet. Food play, WAM. Engagement types preferred, seduction, GFE, first time exploration. Divergent human morph strongly preferred. Robust return client list, positive reviews, but Kota, she's gone freelance. Hasn't been on my books for at least 8 months from the looks of it.
Wait, what? No, she said this was her first private client.
Well, I'd not be able to say one way or the other, but if it was, she's gone a long time between encounters. That is, between her last under my purview and her first under her own. Suppose she might have found a more permanent position. Though generally in those situations people stop taking additional engagements, so I don't know why she'd be transferring Soma for something so temporary.
I don't think so. It sounded as though this was recent, but taking clients on her own.
I don't know what to tell you. The last engagement I facilitated for her was 9 months, 3 weeks, 2 days ago. The Elysium Elegance auction. In fact, I'd begun to be a little concerned that I hadn't run into her at some event or another. She tends towards a client set that like to make sure they're seen with their companions.
Hang on. You didn't give her my name.
I suppose I might have at some point, but not recently. Certainly not in the last week.
Are you sure that was the last time you saw her, Val?
Have you ever known me to forget something about one of my people? I was at Elysium Elegance myself.
Oh, you working?
As a guest, actually.
And who was she with?
Let me see. Of course. Archer Garrison.
Who?
Son of Westing Garrison.
See previous statement.
President of the Neurosomatic Technology Group?
Ah.
The names themselves didn't ring any bells. The company, though. Neurotech had begun life as a run-of-the-mill personality core manufacturer. But over the last 5 years, the release of several so-called field-changing innovations had moved them from obscurity to market domination. They now had undisputed control of the entire vertical structure of the core industry, and were responsible for something like 80% of the tech on which Cloud City's Somas ran.
Dakota.
That tone. Val only used it when he was about to tell me something I wasn't going to like.
There have been rumours about Archer.
Oh, rumours.
He has something of a reputation.
He's aggressive.
No. Well, not exactly.
Well, what is it exactly then, Valentine?
There's a certain kind of man who comes to providers like myself, and I am in the profession of fulfilling fantasies.
Yes, Val, I know what your job is.
Some men, some people, want to be heroes, to swoop in and rescue the poor, exploited individual from their life of degradation and deviance, transform them into the sanctified innocent they were always meant to be, and, in doing so, earn their undying loyalty and affection.
And you're telling me this is somehow a bad thing?
Not at all. When it's a fantasy. Archer... It's possible he can't tell when the fantasy ends.
I don't follow.
Part of the catharsis of a fantasy like this is that it ends. The party stops, the ball gown vanishes, and Cinderella goes home. The girl, or boy or person you've swept away, puts back on their corpus and returns to their life. It has been brought to my attention that he, Archer, handles the end of engagements very poorly because he allows himself to believe them to be real, that he is, in fact, the rescuer, and they are, in fact, the damsel in distress. And he has been said to be less than gracious when the provider gently reminds him that they were hired to do a job. There were complaints. I no longer accept him as a client and have strongly encouraged other provider organizations and individuals to do the same. Some have listened, but others... well...
His mum's a CEO and money talks.
Yes.
Right. Has anyone gotten hurt?
Not physically, as far as I'm aware, but as I said, there have been rumours of general unpleasantness. People he's had engagements with turning up.
Dead?
Alive, but damaged.
This has been Cloud City Sonata, Part 1, Duet for 3. Written and directed by Ash Seguinte, and edited by Erik Seguinte. Theme composed by Amy Young, featuring Emma Laslette as Roxanne, Interirority as The Elevator, Michael E. Fremantle as Valentine Voight, and Vic Collins as Dakota Gold. To find out more about the show, visit dakotagold.lawofnames.com. Tune in next week for Part 2, Haptics in D-flat major.
So, do you think she'll be any good?
Well, for starters, she's late.
Yes, and your first day was so very perfect. I still remember the look on his face when you...
Yes, Director, all very witty. It's a little unorthodox, the fact that I'm the one to chaperone her.
She's a perfect fit, mind you. You've had to do a lot of creative work to drag her away from her last job. All you need to do is keep an eye on her. She's perfect company material.
And what's she been told?
The usual. Only what she needs to know.
And only that?
gods.
And nothing else.
Coming October 31st, Project Daydream, a new queer, weird adventure podcast. To find out more, and to keep up to date with behind-the-scenes materials, follow us at Project Daydream on Twitter, BlueSky, and TikTok. See you soon.